Welcome back to Go Sleepy, your cozy corner of calm nights, gentle ambiance, and soothing lore from the worlds you love. Tonight, we drift deep into the ancient past of Westeros, a time of old magic, whispered legends, and heroes whose stories shaped the realm long before kings and dragons ever rose. So find a warm blanket, settle into a quiet space, and let your eyes grow heavy as we journey through the age of heroes, across the forests of the children, the rise of the first men, the forging of the wall, and the legends born beneath cold northern stars. Breathe deeply, relax your shoulders, and allow the soft echoes of history to lull you into peaceful, dream-filled sleep. This is Go Sleepy. Chapter 1, Part 1. 1,000 words. The dawn before legends, long before the Seven Kingdoms took their shape, before the Iron Throne, before dragons, before noble houses carved their names into history. Westeros was a land wrapped in silence, a vast, ancient wilderness, untouched by kings or conquests, breathing with secrets as old as the moon. It was an age without written memory, where stories lived only in the voices of the wind and the quiet patience of the trees. This was the age of heroes, an era when the world felt young, the nights felt deeper, and magic drifted freely like soft mist rolling over a sleeping valley. In those forgotten centuries, the landscapes of Westeros glowed with untouched beauty. Endless forests stretched across the continent like a dark green sea, their canopies whispering above moss-covered floors, rivers carved through the land like silver ribbons, winding from distant mountains to the far-off shores. Even the mountains themselves seemed alive, old, watchful, and humming with a power that later ages would barely remember. And beneath these mountains lay caverns where strange lights flickered without flame, and where echoes lingered longer than they should, as though the world itself was listening. But the true heart of Westeros was the weirwood forests. Their pale trunks glimmered ghost-like beneath moonlight, their red leaves trembling softly even when the air was still. The carved faces, those solemn ancient visages, watched over the land long before the first men arrived. No one alive in later ages could agree whether the children carved them alone, or whether some were shaped by the hands of powers even older than they. Yet each face held something unmistakable. A presence, gentle but vast, as if the trees dreamed alongside the earth itself. Across these sprawling forests lived the children of the forest, small, delicate, and wondrous beings with eyes like shimmering gold and skin that blended with bark and shadow. They were the first storytellers, though their tales were not spoken in ways men understood. Their voices mingled with rustling leaves, the rushing of rivers, and the calls of distant birds. To them, the world was not separate pieces, sky, water, stone, life, but one great living spirit in many forms. They moved through the night with ease, peaceful yet powerful, guardians of a magic not meant to dominate, but to preserve. The children knew the land intimately. They felt when storms were gathering, sensed when a river wished to change its path, and listened when the earth murmured of distant things awakening. To them, time was not counted in days or seasons, but in cycles of growth, seeds, roots, branches, and the slow decay that fed new life. Their magic, the old magic, wove through everything, subtle yet ever present, like the warmth beneath a thick blanket of snow. Into this world, far across the sea, new arrivals eventually came. The first men, tall, strong, and determined, sailed from Essos in wooden boats, drawn by whispers of a vast land waiting beyond the horizon. They brought bronze blades, simple tools, and the fierce belief that any place they reached could become a home. But they also carried dreams of families, of clans, of communities built from the soil beneath their feet. When the first men landed upon the shores of Westeros, they found a continent both breathtaking and mysterious. They chopped trees to build villages, hunted game to survive, and burned forests to clear land for their herds. But in doing so, they disturbed the quiet balance the children had maintained for thousands of years. The weirwoods wailed without sound. Their carved faces seemed to weep crimson leaves. The earth stirred uneasily. At first, the children watched from the shadows, uncertain. These newcomers were not like them. They were loud, restless, hungry to reshape the land. And when the first men discovered the weirwoods, white as bone, red as fresh blood, they misunderstood their purpose. Many feared them, others sought to claim them. Some even cut them down, unknowingly severing ancient threads of magic woven through the world. Thus began a long and sorrowful conflict, one that stretched across centuries and changed the fate of Westeros forever. Yet even in those early days of tension, moments of wonder softened the edges of fear. The first men, for all their strength and boldness, often paused when they walked beneath a weirwood's branches, feeling a presence they could not name. Some heard faint whispers in the rustling leaves, gentle murmurs that soothed their dreams. Others sensed that the land itself was watching them, not with anger, but with a patient curiosity. And among the children, there were those who gazed upon the newcomers with quiet fascination. They saw in the first men a spark, not unlike their own ancient spirit, a spark of possibility, a spark that might one day become something greater. For though neither the children nor the first men could foresee it, the age of heroes was already beginning to stir, an age shaped by legendary figures whose deeds would echo through countless generations. Their names would one day be spoken with reverence around warm fires. Their stories would grow into songs, and their songs into myths. But for now, they were only threads waiting to be woven into the grand tapestry of time. In the stillness of moonlit nights, as silver light cascaded through trembling leaves, the land breathed softly. The rivers murmured gentle secrets. The stars glimmered with ancient wisdom. And somewhere deep in the heart of the world, magic awakened, a quiet pulse, steady and calm, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The age of heroes had not yet revealed its champions, but the world was readying itself, slowly, silently, like a deep breath drawn before the telling of a long and soothing tale. As centuries unfolded like slow-turning pages of an ancient book, tension between the first men and the children of the forest hardened into open conflict. The newcomers spread across the continent, carving out settlements from riverbanks to mountain valleys, and everywhere their bronze blades met the woven spells of the children. The land trembled. Forests were burned, sacred trees were felled, and the harmony that had once defined Westeros shuddered beneath the weight of clashing worlds. Yet in the quiet moments between battles, there were signs that the land itself yearned for balance, not war. Winds softened after storms. Rivers that had run red from conflict carried fresh, gentle currents again. Even the weirwoods, those ancient witnesses with faces of sorrow and wisdom, seemed to hum with subtle hope when moonlight touched their carved features. Still, the war continued. The first men, with their physical strength and relentless determination, pushed inland from coast to coast. They built strongholds, raised wooden palisades, and forged alliances among their clans. The children, though small in stature, wielded magic that resonated beneath root and stone. They summoned shadows, shaped illusions, and called upon the green seers, those rare ones who could peer into past and future through the eyes of the weirwoods. The conflict became a rhythm of fire and whispers. Bronze clashed against spells woven from leaf and wind. Night after night, the forests echoed with shouts and eerie songs of power, but neither side could truly win. The first men were too numerous, and the children were too deeply connected to the very soul of the land they protected. It was a struggle without victory, only loss. One evening, deep in the heart of the vast forest that would one day be called the Riverlands, a strange stillness settled over the trees. No birds stirred, no insects hummed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. It was in this uncanny quiet that a group of first men, tired from endless fighting, set down their weapons and listened to the rustling branches above. From the shadows emerged a delegation of the children. Their eyes glimmered like ancient gold beneath the canopy. They carried no blades, no sharpened obsidian, only staffs carved from weirwood and adorned with symbols older than memory. The first men instinctively reached for their weapons, but something in the air soothed their fears. The forest itself seemed to speak, urging peace, urging stillness. The eldest of the children stepped forward, her hair woven with delicate leaves, her presence calm and timeless. She spoke in the flowing language of her people, and though the first men could not understand the words, they understood the meaning. Peace, truce, understanding. Among the first men was a leader named Alaric of the Dawn Hills, a man known for both strength and wisdom. He had grown weary of the fighting, weary of seeing the land bleed with every fresh conflict. When he looked upon the children, something softened in him. He felt the weight of generations yet unborn pressing quietly upon his spirit, urging him toward a different path. Through gestures and slow, patient attempts to mimic one another's words, the two groups began to communicate. It took hours, then days, but gradually, a fragile bridge of trust formed between them. Alaric listened when the children explained how the weirwoods were not mere trees, but living vessels of memory, tied to the magic of the land. The children listened as the first men explained their yearning for a home, a place to raise families, to build lives from the soil beneath their feet. And so, in that silent forest, beneath branches that seemed to glow faintly with anticipation, the foundation for something extraordinary began to take shape. The green seers came forward, their eyes whiter than snow, their voices carrying the weight of countless seasons. They spoke of a future where conflict would leave scars too deep for the land to heal. They warned of colder, darker forces stirring beyond the far north, forces neither the children nor the first men could face alone. The first men listened, their hearts steadied as they considered not only their lives, but the lives of generations that would bloom after them. Slowly, deliberately, the leaders on both sides reached an understanding. Thus emerged the beginnings of the Pact, perhaps the most important agreement ever forged in the ancient history of Westeros. It was not written on parchment or proclaimed by trumpets. It was whispered into the roots of the forest, sealed beneath the watchful eyes of the weirwood faces, and bound by a promise made in the presence of old, dreaming magic. The first men agreed to respect the weirwoods, to leave the children's sacred groves untouched, and to halt the burning of the vast forests. In return, the children allowed the first men to settle peacefully upon the lands they had already claimed. They would share Westeros, not as conquerors and defenders, but as neighbors shaped by different paths, yet bound to one earth. Some say the weirwoods themselves glowed softly as the pact was sworn, their carved eyes streaming red leaves like gentle tears of relief. A warm breeze rustled through the clearing, carrying with it the quiet, hopeful song of a world healing after centuries of strife. In the centuries that followed, the first men and the children lived not in perfect harmony, but in something close to it. There were shared hunts beneath moonlit skies, whispered stories exchanged around sacred groves, and long seasons where peace settled across Westeros like a comforting blanket. The Greenseers taught a handful of first men the art of communing with the trees. The first men offered strength and protection in return. Together, they tended to the land, each learning from the other. And though neither side knew it then, this fragile peace would give rise to legends that would become the backbone of the Age of Heroes. With the Pact sealed and peace settling softly over the land, Westeros entered a period unlike any it had ever known. The storms of war quieted, replaced by gentle winds that carried the scent of fresh earth, and the murmur of rivers unscarred by conflict. For the first time in countless generations, the children of the forest and the first men lived not as enemies, but as cautious companions, each learning to understand the strengths and mysteries of the other. The forests, once thick with tension, breathed easier. Moonlight shimmered more softly through the canopy. Birds returned to branches long abandoned during the years of fire and bronze. Even the weirwoods seemed to glow with renewed serenity, their carved faces watching over a land that had begun to heal. The children walked among the roots with lighter steps, their hearts buoyed by hope. The first men built homes that blended gently with the natural world, guided by their newfound respect for the sacred groves. In this gentle lull, something remarkable began to happen. Stories, new stories, started whispering through the land. Tales of individuals who rose above ordinary life, whose deeds echoed with the promise of heroism. The Age of Heroes had quietly begun, like dawn unfolding over a sleeping valley. Among the earliest legends was the tale of Duran, a young man born along the storm-lashed eastern coast. He was said to have fallen deeply in love with Elenay, the daughter of sea and wind. Their love drew the ire of the gods, and storms struck with relentless fury, destroying each home Durin built. Yet he never stopped trying. Again and again he rebuilt, each time stronger than before. With guidance whispered by the children and the support of his people, he constructed a fortress so mighty that even the angriest tempests could not tear it down. Later known as Storm's End, it stood as a symbol of perseverance, one of the first great marks left by humankind on Westeros. Far to the north, The children told stories around whispering fires of a different sort of hero, a figure known simply as the last Greenseer. This individual, neither fully child nor fully something else, possessed a rare gift. They could slip into the skins of animals, see through the eyes of crows, and walk through memories held by the weirwoods. They wandered the forests in silence, serving as a bridge between past and future, watching the threads of fate twist gently through the land. Though their name was lost to time, their presence shaped countless events that followed. But the first men also offered rising legends shaped by courage, curiosity, and unyielding hearts. One such figure was Garth Greenhand, said to have roamed the lush southern lands long before they were divided into kingdoms. According to stories passed down through centuries, he carried the gift of making barren soil fertile with a single touch. Fields blossomed under his guidance, orchards flourished, streams surged with fresh clarity. Some claimed he learned these gifts from the children, listening patiently to the murmurs of nature, while others believed he was simply a man with an extraordinary bond to the earth, whether mortal or touched by something magical. Garth became the forefather of many houses, his legacy woven into the roots of the Reach. Another legend formed around the Hunter twins, two siblings, Alarion and Soraya, whose speed and skill surpassed even the nimblest of the children. They traveled the deep forests where few dared to tread, forging bonds with creatures that other mortals feared. Wolves walked beside them. Hawks perched on their shoulders. It was said that they learned not only to survive in the wild, but to thrive within it, guided by the rhythms of the land. Their stories inspired generations to respect nature rather than conquer it. Yet the most whispered tale during this early era was that of a mysterious wanderer named Bran the Builder. A young man when the Pact had just begun to settle, Bran possessed a sharp mind and a quiet, thoughtful spirit. He walked across Westeros, studying its stone, its hills, its rivers, and its storms. The children watched him with curiosity as he learned from them, listening to the secrets held beneath the earth. Some say he spoke with the Greenseers. Others say he simply observed with uncanny perception. Whatever the truth, his ideas grew into visions grander than anything the world had seen. Bran would later create structures that defied belief. Fortresses built with precision beyond his age, monuments that stood against the harshest winters, and pathways carved so perfectly they seemed touched by magic itself. His name would echo longest in the north, where his greatest work would one day rise like a frozen spine against the sky. But even in these early days, the seeds of his legend had begun to sprout. As these figures emerged, the children and first men both recognized something profound. The world was changing. The land was no longer simply a place of survival and wandering. It was becoming a realm where stories, choices, and dreams took shape. The people who walked it, whether small as sprites or tall as warriors, were leaving their first lasting marks upon a continent that had been ancient long before they arrived. Night after night, as fires crackled under starlit skies, families gathered to share the stories of these rising heroes. The words drifted through villages and forest groves like lullabies carried by gentle breezes. Children listened with wide eyes. Elders nodded with knowing hearts. Even the weirwood seemed to lean closer as though eager to witness the unfolding of these tales. For though the age of heroes was only beginning, everyone could sense that the world was awakening. Magic stirred deeper, courage grew stronger, and legends, once distant as stars, began to draw nearer, whispering promises of the extraordinary deeds yet to come. The land, now peaceful and breathing softly, held its quiet breath. The foundations had been laid, the first heroes had risen, and the tapestry of Westeros's ancient past awaited the next threads, destined to shape its destiny. As generations passed beneath the gentle hush of Westeros's ancient skies, the peaceful years, shaped by the Pact, began to ripple outward in unexpected ways. The age of heroes, once a quiet murmur, blossomed into a vibrant era defined by families whose names would one day become the pillars of the Seven Kingdoms. Their ancestors, bold, gifted, or touched by magic, ventured across forests, rivers, mountains, and endless fields, leaving footprints that would settle into the roots of mighty houses, yet unborn. Though the world remained wild and vast, its scattered clans slowly began to form gatherings of identity, strength, and shared purpose. These gatherings shaped not only the land they occupied, but the hearts and minds of their descendants. And as more stories were born beneath the watchful eyes of the weirwoods, the great tapestry of Westeros tightened into clearer patterns, threads weaving into sigils, sigils into legacies, legacies into kingdoms. Far in the eastern stormlands, where relentless winds hammered cliffs of black stone, the tale of Durin Godsgrief lived on with growing reverence. After building his final fortress, unbroken by any storm, Durin became the first Storm King. The people who followed him believed his endurance against the gods' wrath proved that mortal will could overcome even the mightiest forces. Under his leadership, smaller coastal tribes unified, finding strength in their shared resilience. The dynasty he founded, House Durrandon, would rule for thousands of years, its kings and warriors shaped by the roar of ceaseless tempests. But it was to the fertile southern lands, bathed in sun and rich with rivers, that many early settlers gravitated. Here lay the domain of Garth Greenhand, the legendary figure whose touch was said to bring abundance to even the sleepiest soil. Generations later, his many children, grandchildren, and distant kin spread throughout the Reach, founding the earliest forms of houses that would one day bear sigils of roses, sheaves of grain, and green hands open in blessing. Under the guidance of Garth's descendants, the southern plains became a mosaic of lush farmlands, gentle hills, and towering groves, each nurtured with respect for the natural world. Legends say that Garth walked barefoot through the fields at dawn, the dew clinging to his skin as though the land itself recognized him. Villagers spoke of morning mists parting when he approached, revealing pathways hidden from ordinary eyes. Whether man or myth, his spirit echoed through generations, shaping lineages that valued both cultivation and generosity. These families, united under the banner of prosperity, would one day form the backbone of House Gardner, an ancient line of kings who ruled from the towering castle of Highgarden. To the west, in lands where rugged hills rolled into the vast sunset sea, tales spoke of the Bronze Kings, early rulers descended from the first men who had woven raw strength into their bones. Their families carried blades etched with runes learned from the children, symbols meant to bless warriors with courage in moments of deepest danger. Over time, These hill clans evolved into proud houses holding fast to honor and unshakable endurance. Their descendants would eventually form the line of House Lannister, though that name would arise only much later, carried by a cunning figure of golden hair. But nowhere did the legends of early houses run deeper, nor quieter, than in the far north. Here lay an endless realm of snow-heavy forests, frozen rivers, and mountains sharp as broken crowns. Life was unforgiving, yet those who survived the winters found themselves shaped by them, hardened, loyal, and bonded to the land with unwavering devotion. Among these northern families, one name rose gently but steadily above the rest, the line that sprang from Bran the Builder. Bran, with his quiet gaze and endless curiosity, had already begun leaving his mark upon Westeros through feats of architectural wonder. But beyond the stones he shaped, his true legacy was the family he founded, one that learned to lead not through fear, but through steadfast honor. They lived in harmony with the children of the forest longer than any other people, listening to their wisdom, safeguarding their sacred groves, and honoring the old ways when others began to forget. From these traditions emerged House Stark, though in this distant age the name was still fresh as dew upon morning grass. They did not yet rule all the north. Instead, they guided small clusters of villages and roaming clans, offering protection during harsh winters and leadership during times of unrest. Their bond with the Weirwoods ran deeper than blood. Even in these early days, a Stark child could sometimes feel whispers of ancient memories brushing along their thoughts like soft snowfall. While the southern houses grew around warmth and abundance, the Starks formed their roots from necessity, resilience, and the knowledge that the world beyond their walls held mysteries both wondrous and dangerous. They remembered the warnings of the Greenseers, warnings about things stirring in the far north, beyond the frozen lands at the edge of maps. The Starks listened, even when others did not. And so, we begin to see the early shape of Westeros. The storm-forged rulers to the east, the golden-hearted cultivators to the south, the fierce hill clans to the west, and the winter-bound guardians to the north. Each region began to hum with the early energy of a distinct identity, though true kingdoms were still centuries away. These families did not yet know their names would echo through millennia. They did not foresee wars, alliances, betrayals, or legends waiting to bloom from their bloodlines. They simply lived, guided by the land, by their traditions, and by the whispers of the stories forming around them. The children of the forest watched these early houses with curiosity, even cautious hope. They saw in the first men a potential for greatness, for resilience, for connection. Some among the children believed these early families might one day stand against shadows creeping slowly southward from the frozen wastelands. Others feared the opposite, that the ambition of men might overshadow the gentle balance the children cherished. But for now, all was quiet. The heroes of yesterday had birthed the houses of tomorrow. The land stirred softly beneath the weight of new legacies, and the age of heroes moved steadily into its deeper chapters. Bran the Builder and the shaping of the north, while the southern lands blossomed into peaceful abundance, and the western hills echoed with the pride of rising families. The far north breathed a quieter, deeper kind of awakening. Here, under endless skies of frost and starlight, the legacy of Bran the Builder began to bloom into myth. Though many stories drifted through the centuries like falling snow, all agreed on one truth. Bran was unlike any other mortal of his age. From childhood, he possessed a strange stillness, an awareness of the land that seemed older than his years. He listened when others spoke, but he listened even more intently when the world itself whispered. The creak of ice on a frozen lake, the soft sigh of wind slipping through pines, the faint hum of weirwoods. They were not merely sounds to him, but messages. The children of the forest recognized something familiar in him, something ancient, something that resonated with the deep magic woven beneath the roots of Westeros. It was said that Bran walked through the woods as though he had walked them in previous lives. He could find hidden paths without guidance. He would pause beneath certain trees, as if hearing voices from realms others could not reach. And though he seldom spoke of what he sensed, the children believed he had glimpsed the dreams of the world, if only for a moment. One winter, when Bran was still young, a great storm descended upon the north, one so fierce that even the hardiest of clans feared for their survival. The winds roared like monstrous beasts, tearing at wooden walls and ripping roofs from their beams. Snow rose in swirling mountains, swallowing paths and burying homes. Families huddled together, desperate for warmth and safety. Bran moved through the storm with a quiet determination. He studied the way the wind bent trees, how snow gathered on certain slopes, how cold seeped through walls meant to withstand the harshest seasons. When the storm finally calmed, he gathered the leaders of the northern villages. In a voice steady and soft as falling flakes, he spoke of what he had learned, of shelter designs that caught warmth instead of losing it, of stone formations that resisted wind, of building methods that seemed to come from knowledge far older than the first men. With the children's guidance, Bran began to sketch the first structures that would later define the North. He combined the durability of stone with the balance of nature, creating designs that worked with the land rather than against it. Soon, homes grew sturdier. Forts rose from bedrock. Pathways connecting villages were carved through frozen soil with surprising precision. Under his influence, the scattered northern settlements gained cohesion, forming the early shape of a realm destined for endurance. But Bran's greatest feats had not yet begun. Far beyond the northern plains lay a mysterious region, the last frontier before the lands of permanent winter. Strange lights danced on distant horizons. Rumors whispered of pale shapes moving through blizzards, of ice cracking beneath unseen footsteps. The children spoke of an ancient threat, a cold so deep it carried malice, watching from the shadows beyond human understanding. Bran listened. He listened as elders described dreams filled with bone-chilling winds. He listened as the green seers warned of darkness creeping like frost beneath a door. He listened to the land itself, which seemed to shudder softly beneath the weight of something awakening far, far away. One night, guided by an instinct he could not name, Bran walked alone into the forests. The moon hung low, bathing the snow in silver light. With each step, the air grew colder, sharper, as though winter itself breathed upon the back of his neck. He moved toward a grove where the weirwoods stood clustered, their white bark glowing faintly in the moonlight. There, beneath the largest of the trees, Bran knelt. The face carved into the trunk gazed down at him, ancient, sorrowful, wise. He placed his hand upon the cold bark, and the world changed. Visions flooded him like icy water rushing through a shattered dam. He saw storms that blotted out the sun. He saw armies of silent, pale figures marching through drifts of endless snow. He saw the children of the forest weeping as their groves fell. He saw humans fleeing southward, their breath freezing in the air. He saw a wall of ice rising like a mountain, massive, gleaming, and etched with the light of desperate magic. And through it all, he heard a whisper, soft as a sigh. Build, prepare, remember. When the vision released him, Bran collapsed into the snow, trembling. He did not fully understand what he had seen, but he knew its importance. He knew it carried the weight of generations yet to come. And as dawn crept softly across the sky, he rose with clarity. He must build something extraordinary, something impossible, something that would stand not for years, but for ages. Returning to his people, Bran spoke of a plan, a structure of ice and stone that stretched across the northernmost expanse of Westeros. A barrier not only of physical strength, but of ancient magic. A shield to stand between humanity and the cold dread stirring beyond the edges of the world. The first men were startled, even doubtful, but they trusted Bran. His visions had improved their homes, their roads, their safety. His voice carried the quiet certainty of someone who had glimpsed the future and returned, bearing its warning. The children listened too, and they agreed, for they had seen the same visions. And so, under skies filled with glimmering stars and chilling winds, the foundations were laid for a wall unlike any built before. Blocks of ice larger than wagons were shaped and lifted with the aid of old magic. Stone anchors were carved from mountains themselves. Runes were etched into the base, sigils of protection, memory, and hope. Bran stood at the heart of it all, guiding with steady resolve. His legend was no longer just beginning. It was taking shape like frost blooming across glass. The North was becoming something greater, something destined to guard the realms of men for thousands of years. And the rest of Westeros had no idea what history was quietly unfolding beyond their southern borders. The Wall, the Watchers, and the coming of winter. The creation of the Wall was not a moment, nor even a season. It was an age within an age, unfolding slowly beneath skies pale with frost and shimmering starlight. As the first men and the children of the forest worked side by side, the great barrier rose inch by inch, breath by breath, becoming something far greater than the sum of its frozen parts. Ice blocks taller than horses were carved from frozen lakes, hauled across tundra, and lifted into place with the aid of spells older than speech. Winds howled, storms roared, yet still the wall climbed higher, defying every force that tried to break it. At its base, Bran the Builder walked tirelessly. He inspected every seam of ice, every line of stone anchoring the colossal structure. He listened to the way the wind moved through it, the way light refracted across its frozen surface. And in the quiet hours of night, he felt the magic thrumming within it, ancient, steady, protective. A heartbeat of ice and earth. The children wove their enchantments through the wall, whispering into its foundations their hopes and fears. They carved runes so delicate they seemed like frost patterns, yet each carried the weight of powerful spells. Their green seers pressed their palms to the ice and closed their eyes, sending visions of warning and remembrance deep into its core. The wall became not only a physical barrier, but a memory, an anchor for knowledge that might otherwise fade like mist. As the wall grew into a shimmering titan stretching from coast to coast, whispers spread among the northern settlements. People gathered at the edge of forests, stunned by its scale. Some felt safe for the first time in their lives. Others sensed a solemn gravity settling over the land, an understanding that something truly terrible had been held back, at least for now. For beyond the wall, in the frozen wilderness of the far north, the ancient threat still stirred. Strange lights flickered across the distant sky, pale blues and greens that shimmered like ghostly rivers. Hunters spoke of hearing footsteps on nights when no tracks appeared in the snow. Elders warned that winds from the deepest winter carried whispers not of nature, but of something colder, older, hungrier. These murmurs reached Bran's ear often, but he remained focused, knowing the wall was the only hope for the future he had glimpsed. When the final block was laid and the last runes carved into its gleaming surface, the wall stood as the largest man-made structure the world had ever seen. It rose so high that clouds brushed against it, leaving soft trails of ice crystals on its crest. It stretched so far that no single person could view its entire length, and when sunlight touched it each morning, the wall shone like a beacon, brilliant, serene, and unyielding. But a wall, no matter how mighty, required guardians. The threat beyond the frozen lands would not remain dormant forever. Bran knew this. The children knew it. And soon the people of the north understood it too. Thus began the earliest formation of the Night's Watch. Though it was not yet a sworn brotherhood, nor a formal order. At first, it was a gathering of volunteers, men who felt the pull of destiny in their bones. Warriors, hunters, and wanderers came from scattered villages, offering their strength to guard the realm. Some were drawn by duty, others by fear, and some perhaps by the quiet intuition that the world was shifting into a new, uncertain chapter. The children taught these early watchers how to read the forest's silence, how to sense danger in the way snow settled, how to recognize tracks made by things no ordinary creature could produce. They taught them to listen not only with their ears, but with their breath, their bones, their intuition. These lessons were not easily mastered, for the magic of the children was subtle and soft, requiring patience few possessed. Yet the watchers learned what they could, slowly becoming more attuned to the living rhythm of the north. In return, the first men protected the sacred groves near the wall, ensuring that the children always had sanctuaries close by. Fires were built in stone-ringed pits, shelters rose against the biting winds, and soon a small but steadfast community began to form, one bound by purpose, courage, and the cold reality of their task. Bran the Builder visited the Watchers often. He offered guidance on fortification, on strategy, on survival. But over time, his visits grew less frequent. The wall was complete. His knowledge had been passed on, and the visions that once consumed him fell silent, as though waiting for another era. Some claimed that Bran vanished into the forests, returning to the children to study deeper mysteries. Others believed he became a green seer himself, slipping into the weirwood roots to watch over the land for eternity. Whatever the truth, His legacy stood shimmering in the frozen dawn, a monument that whispered of hope. The early watchers soon realized that the wall was not impenetrable. Night after night, the cold pressed against them like a living thing, testing their resolve. Sometimes they heard eerie cries drifting from the far north, cries that lingered in their dreams long after. Sometimes shapes moved at the very edges of visibility, fleeting shadows that vanished when torches were lifted. These moments hardened the watchers, forged them, bound them to one another. From these early bonds came vows, spoken around quiet fires beneath starlit skies, to guard the living, to stand at the edge of the world, to face what others could not bear to see. Though the formal words would not be carved for centuries, the spirit of the night's watch was born here, in silence, in cold, in resilience. Meanwhile, across Westeros, life unfolded with little awareness of the monumental shift happening in the north. Southern kings tended their fields, hill clans forged bronze, and coastal villages rebuilt their homes. The Age of Heroes continued to flourish, unaware that the wall had become the silent guardian of all their futures. Winter, however, was watching. It waited with patient coldness, knowing that every age eventually meets its shadow. But for now, the wall stood strong. The watchers held their posts, and the world slumbered beneath the calm breath of peace. The Age of Heroes continued, its greatest legends still waiting to rise. As the wall stood gleaming beneath ancient northern stars, and the early watchers kept their solemn vigil, the rest of Westeros entered a golden tide of myth-making. Peace had settled across the land like a warm blanket, softening the memories of centuries-old conflict. Forests flourished, rivers shimmered more brightly, and villages grew into strongholds, their people filled with quiet hope. Yet in times of peace, something else also flourishes. Stories, tales of wonder, courage, and deeds so remarkable that they echo far beyond the lifetimes of those who perform them. This was the heart of the Age of Heroes, a time when individuals stepped forward from humble origins to reshape the world through sheer will, boundless heart, or a touch of the old magic. Their names would become woven into the fabric of Westeros, spoken aloud in mead halls, whispered beneath weirwood branches, and remembered long after their bones turned to dust. One such figure was Symeon Star-Eyes, a blind warrior whose legend traveled on the wings of ravens from the north to the Dornish sands. Symeon was said to have lost his sight to a childhood illness, yet his lack of vision did not dim his spirit. Instead, he sought a new way of seeing, one that came not from the eyes, but from the breath of the world itself. Through years of training, he learned to sense the shift of air around him, to hear the faintest rustle of leaves, to feel changes in energy that others could not perceive. Some tales claimed he carried two swords of pale metal, as slender as moonlight. Others said he bore a staff tipped with meteoric iron, a gift from the children of the forest who recognized his extraordinary intuition. Whatever the truth, Symeon became a protector of the weak, wandering from settlement to settlement like a silent guardian. Bandits fled when they heard his name. Families left offerings beneath stars in gratitude. It was said he once fought a dozen assailants by listening to the rhythm of their breath, and won. Symeon's legend grew so vast that some bards insisted his blindness was not a curse, but a blessing. They said he could glimpse the lights of distant stars even with closed eyes, as though the heavens themselves whispered secrets only he could hear. Whether man or myth, his story became a guiding lantern for generations seeking courage in darkness. But Symeon was not the only hero whose footsteps marked the growing world. In the Riverlands, where gentle waters braided across fertile plains, rose the tales of Florian the Fool, a man whose name deceived all who heard it. Florian was no warrior, nor a lord, nor a wielder of ancient magic. He was, instead, a humble wanderer whose heart was far greater than his station. Known for his kindness, his clumsy bravery, and his unwavering loyalty, Florian became the embodiment of a truth older than time, that even the simplest person can become extraordinary through love. His greatest deed was his devotion to Jonquil, a maiden of uncommon grace. Their romance blossomed beneath the moonlit riverbanks, a gentle story that contrasted sharply with the harsh legends of battle and bloodshed. Florian fought for Jonquil not with steel, but with sincerity, overcoming kings, monsters, and misfortune through determination alone. Their tale traveled from hearth to hearth, calming restless hearts with its reminder that hope can bloom even in the grimmest eras. While romance and valor shaped some legends, others were molded by raw cunning. Deep in the western hills, long before gold was hammered into crowns or sigils carved onto shields, lived a trickster whose name would echo in laughter and caution alike, Lann the Clever. No one agreed on his origins. Some insisted he was the son of a forest spirit. Others claimed he was a wandering orphan blessed with unnatural wit. But all stories agreed on one essential truth. Lann was brilliant. He was said to have outwitted giants, charmed witches, and slipped through locked doors as easily as moonlight through a window. His most famous feat, the tale that ensured his place in immortal lore, was the taking of Casterly Rock. With no army, no weapons, and no wealth, he managed to steal the greatest fortress in the West from the mighty Casterly family. Some stories say he tunneled through secret caverns with stolen torches. Others claim he whispered riddles into the dreams of the rock itself. And a few daring bards insist he simply talked the Casterlys into giving the fortress away. Whatever the truth, his descendants would one day rule the West with a golden fist, carrying the legacy of their cunning forebear. But in the Age of Heroes, Lann remained a wandering enigma, half man, half myth, all charm. Further south, where rolling valleys met high cliffs and sunlit seas, arose the story of Durin Godsgrief, whose love challenged the heavens. Long after his fortress stood victorious against storms summoned by angry deities, Duran continued to rule his people with determination forged from heartbreak. His legacy became a reminder that even the mightiest forces, gods, nature, fate, could not break a soul strengthened by devotion. These heroes, though wildly different in origin and temperament, all shared a common thread. They transformed the land simply by living within it. Through them, Westeros began to develop a sense of identity, a sense of possibility. People looked to the horizon not only with fear of the unknown, but with wonder at what might lie ahead. The children of the forest watched these unfolding stories with fascination. They had once believed the first men to be little more than conquerors, yet now they saw something more: storytellers, dreamers, creators of legacies. For every human who cut trees or burned land, There were others who protected sacred groves, offered respect to the weirwoods, and listened to the quiet wisdom carried by the wind. Across Westeros, families gathered at twilight to share tales of these new legends. Flames crackled gently in fire pits. Children leaned closer, eyes wide, as parents spoke of heroes who wandered the mountains, forests, and rivers. These stories were not simply entertainment. They were guiding stars, shaping the values of generations. For the age of heroes was no longer a distant dawn. It had fully arrived. And with it, a new kind of magic. One born not from ancient forests or forgotten spells, but from the hearts and deeds of mortals who dared to rise beyond themselves. As the age of heroes deepened, Westeros became a land of vibrant stories, rivers of legend that flowed through every valley, castle, and forest. People looked to these tales not merely for comfort, but for guidance, learning that heroism could take countless forms: strength, cleverness, loyalty, sacrifice, or the gentle resilience that allowed one simply to endure. In this era of wonders, more figures stepped forth whose deeds echoed far beyond their lifetimes, leaving lasting impressions on the Seven Kingdoms yet to be born. Among the earliest of these heroes was Brandon of the Bloody Blade, a warrior whose name carried the cold whisper of northern steel. Brandon was said to have been born beneath the red leaves of a great weirwood, the tree's solemn face gazing down as snow fell gently on the newborn child. From his earliest days, he showed courage that bordered on fearlessness. He hunted shadows in the forests, stood against beasts twice his size, and defended villages from marauders who wandered down from the frozen lands. Yet the moment that cemented his legend came when a clan of monstrous beasts, some said they were kin to giants, others believed they were unnatural creations of dark magic, descended upon settlements near the wolf forests. Though many warriors fled or hid, Brandon stood firm. With only a handful of companions, he battled through the night, his blade flashing like lightning under the moon. When dawn finally touched the treetops, the beasts lay defeated, and Brandon's weapon dripped red like autumn leaves. From that day onward, he was known as Brandon the Bloody Blade, a guardian whose ferocity protected countless northern families for generations. While Brandon's legacy was one of battle, other heroes shaped the land through wisdom. One such figure was the Grey King, whose story rippled across the Iron Islands and carried the weight of mystery. The Grey King was said to be both mortal and touched by the sea itself. Legends claim he slew the sea dragon Naga, a beast whose breath could boil the ocean. After defeating the creature, he built a throne from its bones and ruled a kingdom carved from stone cliffs and storm-lashed shores. But his most famous deed was not his battle with Naga. It was the forging of the first partnership between humankind and the elements. Tales tell that he learned to harness the storm winds, granting his people mastery over the sea. With his guidance, the Ironborn built ships that danced atop waves, vessels that carried them farther than any before. Whether these feats were true or woven from salt-soaked imagination, the Grey King's legend gave the Ironborn a sense of fierce identity that still echoed centuries later. Hard lives, harsh seas, unyielding spirits. Far to the south, where golden orchards and deep forests shaped the fertile land, arose the tale of Ellen Eversweet, a woman whose kindness was said to soften even the cruelest of hearts. Ellen possessed a gift not of battle or magic, but of healing. She gathered herbs from river banks, roots from groves, and flowers that opened only beneath moonlight. Her knowledge surpassed that of any healer before her, and soon people traveled from distant valleys seeking her care. When a terrible sickness swept through the southern regions, threatening to wipe out entire villages, Ellen worked tirelessly to craft remedies. She listened to the earth's whispers, watched how animals treated their wounds, and brewed salves from plants others overlooked. Her efforts saved countless lives, and soon she became a symbol of hope, a hero whose courage came not from steel, but from compassion. In a realm often defined by war and ambition, Ellen's legacy reminded Westeros that strength could also reside in gentleness. Another figure whose legend soared was Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, a knight whose feats bordered on the impossible. Though the concept of knighthood would not fully form until later ages, Serwyn embodied its earliest ideals. He was said to be unwaveringly brave, endlessly courteous, and unflinchingly loyal. His shield, polished so perfectly it reflected the world like a still pond, became his greatest ally. The most famous tale of Serwyn tells of how he confronted a fierce dragon that terrorized villages near the foothills of the Red Mountains. Knowing he could not overpower the beast with strength alone, Serwyn approached with careful strategy. As the dragon descended in a burst of flame and smoke, Serwyn raised his mirror-bright shield, reflecting the creature's own fiery breath back at it. Startled and blinded, the dragon thrashed wildly, allowing Serwyn to strike a single, decisive blow that ended its reign of terror. Whether the dragon truly existed or not mattered little. The legend inspired countless warriors to fight with courage and cleverness rather than recklessness. In the east, near the storm-racked coasts, lived Dalla the Dreamer, a woman who claimed to see visions hidden in twilight. She could sense storms before they formed, predict droughts before they dried the land, and even glimpse moments of future triumphs or tragedies. Her insights guided early kings in matters of harvest, diplomacy, and defense. While some doubted her abilities, others believed she glimpsed echoes of the same ancient magic known by the Greenseers. Her presence shaped the decisions of early Storm Kings, giving her a quiet but powerful influence over the region's destiny. Yet perhaps the most beloved tale of the Age of Heroes was that of the Mouse King of the North, a story so gentle and whimsical that even the sternest warriors smiled at its telling. According to legend, a small boy in a northern village befriended a family of mice living beneath his home. When famine struck and wolves prowled the forests, the mice brought him hidden treasures, seeds, nuts, and even forgotten stores buried beneath snow. The villagers laughed at the boy's strange friends, until a harsh winter forced them to acknowledge the mice's cleverness and resourcefulness. The boy grew into a wise leader, teaching his people that even the smallest creatures could carry great wisdom. Though clearly exaggerated, this story offered warmth during winters when hope grew fragile. All these legends, whether rooted in truth or shaped by imagination, formed the foundation of Westeros's cultural identity. They taught communities to value courage, intelligence, love, resilience, and kindness. They reminded people that destiny was not limited to kings or warriors. Anyone, no matter their birth, could shape the future. As these tales spread through villages, keeps, and open fields, they mingled with older songs of the children of the forest, blending magic and mortality into a rich tapestry. Westeros was no longer just a place. It was a living story carried by those who walked its soil. The Age of Heroes continued to flourish, reaching toward its final, most defining legends. As the Age of Heroes reached its twilight years, a quiet unease began to settle across Westeros. The land still thrived with stories of valor and wonder, yet beneath the surface, beneath the warm glow of hearth fires, beneath the soft rustle of golden leaves in autumn, something colder stirred. It began at first as whispers on northern winds, faint and distant, barely distinguishable from the sigh of drifting snow. But as seasons turned, the whispers sharpened, carrying warnings older than any mortal memory. The children of the forest sensed it first. Their green seers dreamed of skies turned black, of forests frozen into stillness, of stars swallowed by creeping darkness. The first men felt it in their bones, in the sudden chill that clung to evenings even in southern regions, in the unexpected frosts that touched fields before their time. People spoke of animals behaving strangely, wolves gathering in silent circles, crows refusing to fly north, elk migrating too early. Nature itself shuddered, as though recoiling from an approaching shadow. And then, one winter night, the darkness arrived. It swept across the north like a living tide, smothering moonlight, swallowing warmth. The air turned so cold that breath froze instantly, hanging like tiny crystals suspended in the air. Villages vanished beneath blizzards that roared like ancient beasts. Rivers hardened into walls of blue ice. The northern skies, once shimmering with aurora light, dimmed into endless blackness. This was the long night, a winter without end, a nightmare whispered of for generations, but never truly believed. Fires crackled weakly, struggling against winds that extinguished even the fiercest flames. Children huddled beneath firs, while elders whispered prayers to old gods and new, hoping their breath would warm the air just enough to survive another hour. But the cold was not the only enemy. From the frozen lands beyond the wall emerged figures of pale ice, silent, tall, and deadly. Their eyes glowed an eerie blue, as if carved from winter itself. They moved through snowdrifts without sound, without warmth, without mercy. These creatures became known as the Others, though in later ages they would be remembered as White Walkers. They brought with them an army of the dead, humans, animals, even ancient beasts, raised from icy sleep to serve as relentless soldiers. The wall held strong, its ancient spells glowing faintly beneath the assault. Yet even the Watchers felt fear unlike anything they had faced before. Some nights, the cold grew so deep the wall itself seemed to tremble. Some Watchers vanished without trace. Others reported seeing pale shapes observing them from distant peaks, waiting, watching. In the chaos that followed, heroes rose not for glory, but out of desperate necessity. One such figure was the last hero, whose story became the stuff of haunting lullabies and campfire whispers. He set out from the collapsing northern settlements with a sword, a horse, a dog, and the fierce determination to seek aid from the children of the forest. His companions fell one by one, consumed by cold, taken by shadows, or lost to the roving dead. His sword shattered. His horse perished. Even his dog, loyal to his final breath, faded into snow. Alone, starving, and frostbitten, the last hero continued his trek, each step a battle against despair. Some say the others cornered him among ice-glazed rocks. Others claim he collapsed beside a frozen river, ready to surrender to the dark. But just as the cold was about to claim him, the children found him. Guided by visions and ancient instinct, they gave him shelter beneath the warm glow of weirwood fires. In that hidden grove, surrounded by red leaves trembling like hearts, the last hero learned secrets of magic, old, deep, and powerful. Armed with new knowledge, he returned to battle alongside humans and the children. His arrival rekindled hope in a world drowning in endless winter. From his courage emerged alliances between clans, between kingdoms, between forest beings, and men who once feared each other. They crafted weapons of dragonglass, obsidian shards that pierced the enchanted ice of the others. They fortified settlements, lit signal fires across mountains, and prepared for a final stand against the cold. The last days of the long night were fierce and unrelenting. Battles raged beneath skies devoid of sun. Entire forests were lost beneath ice, their branches frozen into crystal sculptures. Wolves fought beside warriors. Children of the forest unleashed torrents of magic, swirling green energies that crackled against the icy forms of the others. And through it all, the last hero pressed forward, driven not by destiny, but by the simple, burning belief that the world must survive. While songs of later ages attribute the ultimate victory to a cataclysmic event known as the Battle for the Dawn, the truth, like many legends, was shaped by time. Some claimed a great warrior struck down the night's king, commander of the others. Others insisted the children unleashed a spell so powerful it forced the creatures back into the frozen wilderness. Still others said a dawn brighter than any before pierced the sky, driving the darkness away with divine fire. Whatever the truth, the long night eventually ended. The sun rose, weak at first, a pale disk trembling on the horizon, but glowing with the promise of warmth. Snow began to melt. Birds dared once more to sing, and families emerged from shelter to greet a world devastated, but alive. The wall remained standing, though its magic hummed with exhaustion. The children retreated deeper into their remaining forests. Their numbers diminished, and the humans, though traumatized, rebuilt their homes with quiet determination. The memories of the others, sharp and terrifying in the moment, softened into story as centuries passed. Fear became legend, legend became myth, and myth became bedtime tales told to restless children on cold nights. But those who remembered understood a solemn truth. The wall was not built to divide men. It was built to protect them. And the heroes of the long night had left behind a legacy more enduring than any castle or crown. The reminder that when the world grows darkest, unity becomes its brightest weapon. As the age of heroes gently faded into the following eras, Westeros carried these tales like embers, warm, glowing, and eternal. Their stories lulled generations into peaceful sleep, whispered through the red leaves of weirwoods, carried by breezes from mountains to sea. The age of heroes had ended, but its memory would live forever